With the Gauguin Portraits exhibition and this panel discussion, the National Gallery has taken an important step in acknowledging that it is no longer ethically tenable to interpret in an aesthetic vacuum the work of artists who have exploited or abused others. By noting in the panel text that Gauguin, quote, repeatedly entered into relations with young girls and undoubtedly exploited his position as a privileged Westerner to make the most of the sexual freedoms available to him, the gallery has tacitly declared that an artist's position in the Western canon does not make them immune from accountability. Further, by observing that the perspectives of Tammana, Gauguin's first so-called Tahitian wife, are not recorded, the National Gallery has implied that her voice would have been valued. This reflection on Gauguin's behavior is imperative, given the personal nature of portraiture, and moreover, the fact that many of the works featured appear to draw upon and thus benefit from his sexual relationships with underage French Polynesian girls. The damage caused by sexual exploitation is perpetuated if it is not called out. In addition, we must consider the ethics of the gaze. Audiences have the right to know so that they can make informed decisions about if and how they wish to engage with the works. The National Gallery has clearly understood within the context of the decolonization and #MeToo movements that its own ethical conduct will be judged in part upon its commitment to exploring the ethical matters emerging from artist biographies. The gallery's acknowledgement of Gauguin's ethical failings is also an attempt to circumvent the kinds of protests and interventions directed at museums that have been silent on such issues. Michelle Hartney's 2018 guerrilla intervention at the Metropolitan Museum, for instance, consisted of her surreptitiously adding her own corrective wall texts next to the authorized texts lionizing Picasso and Gauguin. Hartney explained, quote, I was doing this performance to ask for some context on the artist's misdeeds. I hope that in the future, they will consider providing more information about these artists who were worshipped. I'm hoping to start a conversation. While Gauguin Portraits does provide some of the contextualization for which Hartney calls, its foray into the sphere of ethics is brief, almost a whisper. Important connections are not made, for example, between the most disturbing works in the show and the name Gauguin chose for his last home, the House of Prostitution. Further, in an apparent unease with presentism and drive not to allow the details of an artist's life to overshadow their work, the assertions in the panel text that, quote, colonial and misogynistic fantasies about Polynesian women were widespread, and that, quote, it was not uncommon in Tahiti for families to occasionally offer their young women to powerful outsiders, seems to condone Gauguin's actions. A comment in the introductory video by a Marquesan activist that it was, quote unquote, normal for French Polynesian girls as young as 14 to be sexually active does not negate the ethical responsibility of Gauguin in exploiting his power over those more vulnerable. This contradictory messaging prompts us to imagine the contentious and illuminating behind-the-scenes discussions that undoubtedly took place among the exhibition team in crafting this show's interpretive strategy. In fact, after the exhibition opened in Ottawa earlier this year, it was reported that several of the interpretive texts were re-edited to more effectively navigate colonial and patriarchal issues. These difficulties reflect the complex realities of museum ethics, where most decision-making is not straightforward, but sits at the messy in-between. Indeed, it is the processes of deliberation, not the final decisions, that are most illuminating, as these processes set out vital questions and establish precedents, enabling other practitioners as well as museum publics to engage critically with the issues at hand. Sharing these processes of deliberation through video, social media, or other means can bolster transparency and trust. Moreover, identifying the key question animating ethical deliberations in interpretation and deploying this to frame an exhibition can provide a productive way forward, as it demonstrates ethically informed curating while recognizing the agency of visitors to take part in the discursive process. In its brave 2017 exhibition, Eric Gill the Body, the Ditchling Museum of Art and Craft piloted such an approach by asking if and how the knowledge of Gill's disturbing biography of incest affects our appreciation of his depiction of the human figure. How does the knowledge of Gauguin's sexual relationships with adolescent girls in Tahiti impact our reading of his portraits? And how might the National Gallery have posed this question to express an institutional commitment to engaging with ethical issues? It's no easy feat for a National Gallery to move away from the strictures of canonicity. Posing ethical questions of an artist with a history of exploitation or abuse enables museums to move beyond the reductive dialectic between aggrandizement on the one hand and total condemnation and censorship on the other. Thank you.